Hello everyone, my name is Francois, and today in this video we are going to set up a FreeRADIUS server on Kali Linux. The objective is to use this server to perform 802.1X authentication on a Wi-Fi network. Actually, we're going to test it on two different Wi-Fi networks, on the Cisco networks and on the Aruba networks. Now, why do we want to use 802.1X authentication, and why would we use FreeRADIUS? So to answer the first question, why do we want to use 802.1x? It's a very secure way to connect to the Wi-Fi network. But in order to have it working, you need a Radius server, and the Radius server is going to act as an authentication server. Now, most of the time in the enterprise world, you're going to have a Radius server that costs a lot of money. For instance, Aruba ClearPass or Cisco ISE, and you don't necessarily have the money to buy this type of servers. It's very advanced servers, right? But sometimes you don't have the need for like such an advanced level, and sometimes you just want to have like a quick Radius server in your lab so you can do some testing, or you just want to have the ability to install a very simple Radius server for a small business, right? So that's when FreeRADIUS comes handy, because FreeRADIUS is free and you can install it on basically any Linux servers, and it's pretty easy to use, and you can use it with any kind of Wi-Fi equipment. It doesn't have to be enterprise level. It doesn't have to be Cisco. It doesn't have to be Aruba. You can use it with like a Netgear or a D-Link router, and it's going to allow you to have a secure way to connect to your Wi-Fi network. So let's get into it. The lab setup we have for today, so we have an Aruba controller 650 watt with an Aruba AP105. We have a Cisco controller 2504 with the Cisco AP1702. They're all connected on the LAN on VLAN 20. And then we have another VLAN for the servers, VLAN 100, on which we are going to install the FreeRADIUS servers. So I have a Kali Linux VM running, and that's what we're going to use to install the FreeRADIUS server on. And then we're going to configure our controllers so they can talk to this Radius server. And we're going to configure two new Wi-Fi networks, one on the Aruba controller that we're going to call Aruba SemFio Ant, and then another one on the Cisco controller that we're going to call Cisco SemFio Ant. Both of these Wi-Fi networks are going to be using WPA2 Enterprise, which uses 802.1X authentication, and we're going to use the EAP MSLab v2 EAP method to perform authentications. So in a 802.1x setup, 802.1x is basically a framework that allows you to access to the network in a secure way by blocking the access to the network until the client is fully authenticated. And in this framework, you have the supplicant, which is the client. You have the authenticator. The authenticator is going to relay the authentication's request to the authentication server, and the authentication server authenticates the supplicant. So in our case, the supplicant is going to be our client. The authenticator is going to be the Aruba controller and the Cisco controller, and the authentication server is going to be our FreeRADIUS server. So how are the authentication process working for in our case? In our case, we're going to use 802.1x with EAP MSLab v2. So EAP means it's protected, and then it basically creates a tunnel, and within the tunnel you're going to have a second EAP method, and the second EAP method is EAP MSLab v2. Now how it works, it's basically a double double authentication. So the Radius server is going to authenticate itself to the client using a certificate, and then the client is going to authenticate itself to the Radius server using a username and a password. So basically that's the setup, and so I think we have everything in place to get to work. So let's get started. We have three main steps in this process. The first one is install and set up the FreeRADIUS on the Kali Linux. The second one is configure the new Wi-Fi 802.1X Wi-Fi networks on the controllers, and then we can finally test everything. So for the first step, we're going to start by validate the network interface on the Kali Linux. So if we recall correctly, we have the Kali Linux server on the VLAN 100, so we're going to make sure we have connectivity back to the router, and we're going to make sure we have connectivity back to both controllers since they're going to be communicating together. After that, we're going to download and install the FreeRADIUS server onto the Kali Linux. Once it's done, we're going to configure FreeRADIUS to use PEEP with MSHAP v2 as an inner method. We're going to add the Wi-Fi controllers at the Radius client. This is important so the Radius server knows who is sending the authentication request. If you don't do this step, the Radius server is just going to say, I'm not going to proceed anything because I don't know who's sending me the authentication request. After that, we're going to add new users in the FreeRADIUS server database, so we can use these users to connect to the Wi-Fi network, and basically the users are the one you see here and are the one used by the end user. After that, we're gonna create our own CA certificate, CA and server certificate to use. We could use like a basic certificate that comes with FreeRADIUS, but it's pretty it's possible with OpenSSL to create your own CA certificate. It's not too long, and it's pretty cool. So we're just going to do it and then use our CA certificate on our clients. If I come back to the little drawing here, the CA certificate on the clients, I'm going to install it so the client will know that the server certificate, comes from a known authority. And then we will be ready to start the FreeRADIUS server. So let's get to work. So I have the Kali Linux right here. I'm gonna log in. Now in Kali Linux, so I have the version 4.0. We're gonna start by checking the network configuration. So my IP address is 192.168.100.11. So the server is in the VLAN 100. That's perfect. So let's try to ping the gateway 192.168.100.1. So we can ping the gateway. Good. Let's see if we can communicate with the controllers. So the Cisco controller is at 192.168.20.2. So let's see if we can ping it. Yeah, it works perfect. And now let's see if we can communicate to the Rupa controller with the .3, and it works. So at this point we're good to go. We can install the FreeRADIUS. So in order to do so, it's pretty straightforward. Sudo apt get install FreeRADIUS star. So it's going to take a little while, so I'll be back when it's done. Alright, so the process is done. Let's check if the FreeRADIUS is installed. Yeah, so we have FreeRADIUS version 2.2.5. So now we're ready to modify the configuration. So we're going to move to the FreeRADIUS directory, etc FreeRADIUS. Okay, so here we are, and the main configuration file is radiusd.conf. The FreeRADIUS is designed to be working as is when you install it, so we're not going to make any changes in this configuration file. However, we're going to make changes in other configuration files that connect back to this configuration file, this main configuration file. So let's start. If we go back to our to-do list, let's start by configure the FreeRADIUS to use PEEP and MSHAP v2. So in order to configure the FreeRADIUS to use PEEP, it's going to happen on the eep.conf file. So we can go ahead and open this file. And then in order to have to use PEEP, you need to modify the default eep type from MD5 to PEEP. And then you save the file. So let's make sure everything is saved. PEEP. So here we see the default eep method is PEEP. So we're good. So this is the first part, the PEEP, and then the inner method to configure the inner method. This is going to happen in a file located in the modules directory. So we can go ahead and modify this file. This file is called MSHAP. And then so you just have to enable the use of MPPE. You have to enable the encryption. You have to enable strong, and you have to enable this one as well, the with anti-domain hack. Alright, so you just save everything, and we're good. We finished the first step, which is configure FreeRADIUS to use PEEP and MSHAP v2. Now we can add the Wi-Fi controllers as Radius clients. So if we go back to our directory, it's going to happen in the client file, clients.conf file. And what it does is that we're going to add the controller. So when the controller sends the authentication request, the FreeRADIUS knows them and processes the request. If we don't do so, the FreeRADIUS server is just going to ignore the request, and it's not going to work. The authentication process is not going to work. So let's go ahead and modify this file and add the two controllers as clients. Alright, so I'm going to add it right here because I have the example right here. So client 192.168.20.2, which is the Cisco. Which is the Cisco controller. So the secret is going to be used to authenticate the controllers with the Radius server. So for this example, I'm going to use a secret. Actually, I'm going to use FreeRADIUS secret 123, and then you can specify a little name. So Cisco. This is just for like a debug. If you are trying to debug something, it's going to show you the name so you can find the information easily. So I'm going to do the same thing with the Aruba controller. I'm going to use the same secret to make it easier. Short name, Aruba controller. Alright. So now we're good. We added the two controllers, so they're going to be able to relay the authentication request from the supplicant, so from the client. So we can now save the changes, make sure that the changes have been applied. So I just go back and see if I have Cisco, let's say. As a Cisco, Actually, I'm going to use the IP address. Double check I didn't make any mistake. So we have Cisco and then the Aruba. Alright, so we're good. So we've configured the PEEP method, we've added the Wi-Fi controllers as clients. Now we need to add the users to the FreeRADIUS server database so the end users can be known by the FreeRADIUS server. So this happens in the users file right here. So I'm going to open the users file. And I'm going to add the user right here. So I could add only one user and use it for all my testing, but what we're going to do, we're going to add two users. One we're going to use for the test we're going to do on the Cisco network, and then one we're going to use for the test we're going to do on the Aruba network. So first user, I'm going to call it Cisco user, and I'm going to set a password as Cisco password 123. You do the same thing with create a second user, Aruba user. Clear text password equal. Right, here we go. Equal Aruba password 123. Okay, so we have two users and we have the password defined. So we're going to use this information in order to connect. If we go back to our little drawing, to connect using the client to the Wi-Fi network. So here we have the Aruba user and we have the Cisco user. Alright, so we're good. We're going to save the file. Make sure that everything has been saved. Cisco user. Made a mistake. Cisco user. Okay, we have it. And then Aruba user. Alright. So at this point we're good. We configure everything we needed on the Redis side. The only thing we have left to do is create the certificates. But before doing this, I'm going to test that the Redis server is actually, fully configured, because we could use it as is, and it's going to use like their internal certificate. So we can actually test it right now. So in order to do so, I'm going to open a new terminal, make it bigger a little bit, and I'm going to fire up the FreeRADIUS server. So in order to start the service, you can do a FreeRADIUS -X, and here it starts the service and it tells me it's listening on port 1812, which is the UDP port used for Radius authentication, and then on port 1813, which is the Radius UDP port used for accounting. So now if I go back to this one, if I want to make sure that the Radius server is up and running listening on those ports, I can do a netstat listening, and then I'm going to have UDP Radius and UDP Radius accounting. So we all good to go. There's a little program built into Kali Linux that's called rad test, and rad test allows you to test your Radius servers if you have a username and password defined. And luckily we just defined two username and password, so we can do our little test and test if the Radius server is working properly. So we can go ahead and test our Cisco user, for instance. So Cisco user, and then the password, Cisco password 123. Our server is localhost, and then the key that's used to the secret in the default configuration is testing 1, 2, 3. Okay. So here, what we have is that it's sending a access request, and then we have received the access accept packet from the Radius server, which is good, which means that everything is working fine. So now if we go back on the other window on the Radius server, we can see the logs, and we can see that it's been accepting the user. We have defined the Cisco user, and with this passkey, so everything works good for the Cisco user. We can do the same thing with the Aruba user. Aruba user, Aruba password 123, localhost because the server is localhost, and then the testing 123. And we have the same answer, access accept, so everything is working fine, everything is working good, and we could use the service for the FreeRADIUS server as is. Okay, so I'm gonna stop the process, and we're gonna go on with the configuration. Now, what we want to do is create our own CS certificate and our own server certificate, and then afterwards we can export the CS certificate and install it on all the clients that are going to connect to the Wi-Fi network, and this way we're going to have a secure way to connect, and the clients are going to know that the Radius server they're connecting to is the real Radius server, and they don't connect to some unknown Radius server. And on the Linux there is a tool that's called OpenSSL that's built into Kali Linux by default, and OpenSSL can be used to generate all the pieces needed for a certificate, CS certificate, and a server certificate. So we're going to go ahead and perform all the tasks needed to create those two certificates. After that, we're going to have to modify a little bit the FreeRADIUS configuration so they can use these new certificates into the process. So this is the longest step of the first chapter. So just bear with me. All right. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to back up the OpenSSL configuration file. So you can find them in SSL, OpenSSL. Okay. I'm going to back it up with another name. Backup. All right. So if something goes wrong, we can always revert back. And I'm going to modify the OpenSSL file, configuration file. So once we're in the file, we're going to start by changing the directory where everything is kept. We're going to use a new directory in our FreeRADIUS directory, so everything is at the same place and it's easy to use. So I'm going to call the new directory FreeRADIUS. Let's not make any mistake here. I'm going to call the new directory EEP, and then EEP CA. Okay, so etc FreeRADIUS EEP CA. All right, and then we're going to change the default values of the certificates. So every time we generate a new certificate, it's going to be using these default values. So country code, in Canada, so I'm going to use CA. Some province, I'm going to use Ontario. As a city, I'm going to use London. Organization, so it's your company, so I'm just going to put my company name, SemFio Networks, Inc. Then I could use a unit, so let's say I use IT, and then command name. This is going to be the name basically of the certificate. So I can do SemFio CA, an email if they want to contact the IT. Alright, so that's pretty much it. So we can now save the configuration. Okay, so now we need to create the new directory, right? So we can go ahead and create a new directory right here. So we're already in HTTP FreeRADIUS, so we can create it right here. IP. So here it is, IP. And now we can go into the directory. So we have nothing. And we're going to use the OpenSSL script that's used to generate certificate. We're going to copy this script and paste it in this directory so we can use it locally in this directory. Alright, so the script is located at usr lib ssl misc ca.pl. Alright, I'm going to copy right here, dot, and then we should have right here. Okay, so we have the script and we will be able to use it later on to generate the certificates. But right before that, we're going to modify this script so this script generates certificates where we want it to be generated. So let's go ahead and modify this script. Okay. So we need to change one of the parameters. So we need to change this parameter, CA top. So this is where it's going to be generating the certificate. So we want it where the FreeRADIUS is. So etc FreeRADIUS IP CA. Alright, so we're good. We can save it. Yes. Alright, so we're good. We can validate that everything is in place and has been saved properly. So if we look for IP CA, we have it. We now have the CA top parameter set to the file we wanted, the destination we want. Alright. Okay, so now we're going to use the script to generate our new CA certificate. So we can use the script with the option -new CA. Okay, so press enter, and then you have to enter password that you're going to use later on to generate the server certificate. So make sure you remember it. Okay, and then it's gonna reuse the default data we entered in the configuration file earlier. So we can just press enter. It's going to take the default configuration. For the name, I'm just going to name it CA address. I'm not going to use these ones. And then the passphrase. Alright, so it has just created the CA certificate. So we see now that we have a IP CA directory. So if we go into it, we have a cacert.pem. So we have our CA certificate. So that's perfect. We can go on. And now we're going to create the server certificate. So we're going to run the script again with another option that's called new rec as new request minus nodes. All right, so we're going to use the same data. For the server, we can say FreeRADIUS. And the challenge password, we didn't set it. Okay, so the request is done. So we have the new key. We now have a pair of keys ready to be sent to the CA in order to generate the server certificate. So if we check the keys, we have the new key and the new request. So we're going to use these keys to generate the server certificate. So in order to do so, you have to use a script again, CA, and then with the option minus sign, enter the passphrase. That's the one you entered previously. Do you want to sign the certificate? Yes, I do. Yes, commit. All right. So signed certificate is in the new cert.pm, right? So new cert.pm is our server certificate for our FreeRADIUS server. So now we have, if we go back to our little drawing, now we have our CA certificate and we have our server certificate. So now what we need to do, we need to configure our FreeRADIUS server to use these two certificates. All right, so let's go back into the FreeRADIUS, and to do so we need to create two extra files named DH and random. So in order to do so, we can use OpenSSL. OpenSSL DH param check text -5 512 out DH. So we're creating the DH file. D random count equal to, and then chmod 640 random new cert.pm new key.pm new rec.pm dh. All right, so now we have our GH file and our random file that we're going to use in the FreeRADIUS configuration. Okay, so if we go back into the FreeRADIUS directory, we can go ahead and configure and change the eep.conf configuration. All right, so nano eep.conf, and then we need to change the private key file. All right, here it is. Private key file. So we need to change it with our server certificate. So it's etc FreeRADIUS eep, and it's new key.pem. So that's a server certificate. Then we need to change the certificate file right here to etc FreeRADIUS eep new cert.pm. All right, and then after that we need to change the CA file right here, which is the A certificate file, radius eep ca, and it's called ca cert.pem, and then we need to change the dh file that we've just created, etc FreeRADIUS eep dh, and finally the random file. So etc FreeRADIUS eep random. One last change. We're going to uncomment this line. There we go, and then we can save the configurations. Alright, make sure the configuration has been saved. Alright, one of the changes that I've made is here, appear here, so we're good to go. Now we can go ahead and start the Radius server again. Alright, make sure that it's listening. It's listening on the port we want. Radius and Radius, okay. So Radius, which is UDP 1812, and Radius accounting, which is UDP 1813. So at this point, we have finished the configuration on the FreeRADIUS server. So we're good to go, and we're good to head up to the controllers to configure their Wi-Fi networks with 802.1X. Okay, so now that we have the FreeRADIUS server set up and running, it's now time to configure the 802.1X Wi-Fi network on the controllers. So on both Cisco and Aruba, we're gonna do the following: add the FreeRADIUS server as a Radius server on the controller. After that, we're gonna configure a new WLAN using WPA2 Enterprise with 802.1X Authentication. And we're going to use the FreeRADIUS that we added previously as the authentication server. After that, we can go ahead and enable the WLAN and start our testing. So let's start with the Cisco controller. Plug in. Alright, so I'm using a 2504 controller, and the version I have is 8.1.111.0. So first step is to add the FreeRADIUS server as a Radius server. So in order to do so, on the Cisco box, you click on Security, and then you navigate to AAA Radius Authentication, and then at the top right, you're going to click on New. So we're basically adding a new server, Radius server. We're going to enter the IP address of our FreeRADIUS server, so 192.168.100.11, and then they're asking for the shared secret, and the shared secret is the secret we defined in the client file on the FreeRADIUS server. So we used FreeRADIUS secret 123. FreeRADIUS secret 123, and this share secret is going to be used by the controller and by the Radius server, so they know they authenticate each other and they know they can talk securely. So I apply the changes. That's basically all we have to do. On the Radius, we can also add accounting server. So we're going to use the FreeRADIUS server to do accounting as well. It's the same settings since it's the same server. FreeRADIUS secret 123, FreeRADIUS secret 123. Hopefully I didn't do any mistake. Alright, at this point we're good to go. We can go ahead and configure a new WLAN. So we just navigate to the WLAN tab, and then here we can just click go next to create new, create new, go. Profile, if I go back to my little drawing, I chose Cisco SemFio Ant, like enterprise. I like to use the same name for my profile name and my SSID. It makes it easier. So I'm going to use the same name, Cisco SemFio Ant, apply. Okay, here as interface, I'm going to select WLAN, and WLAN refers to VLAN 88 because I want my client to connect onto VLAN 88, right? So the WLAN interface on my controller refers to VLAN 88. I'm going to enable the new network, and then I'll navigate to security to set up the to configure the Radius server, right? So the default settings are already set up for WPA encryption, WPA2 encryption using AES with 802.1X authentication, so we don't have to change anything here. And then on the AAA server tab, that's where we're going to specify what authentication server to use and what accounting server to use. So in our case, we only have the FreeRADIUS server, so we can use this server. We can select it here. If you don't define the server in your security tab, you're not going to see anything when you try to select a server here. So you have to previously define the server if you want to use it here. Okay, so we chose the FreeRADIUS server for the authentication, for the accounting. You can double check at the bottom that Radius is selected in the authentication method, and then that's basically it. That's all you have to do. You can just apply, and voila, that's done. You have your Cisco SemFio Enterprise. It's enabled, and it uses WPA2 authentication 802.1X. All right, so we're done on the Cisco box. Just before trying to check if the SSID is broadcasting, I'm going to show you the WLAN interface I was talking to you about. So if you go into controller and the interfaces, you can see that the WLAN interface is right here and relates to VLAN 88. All right, so at this point we're good. I can see if I have my if the network is broadcasting here. I can see it's broadcasting, so we're good to go for the testing. Configure the Cisco controller. We can go on and configure the Aruba controller. So I'm going to log in into the controller I have in the lab. And it's basically almost the same steps. On the Aruba controller, you have a little bit more bricks to build, and then it all comes together at the end, but it's basically the same process. It's pretty straightforward. So I'm going to head to the configuration tab. First thing I'm going to check is the VLAN. So I should have the VLAN 88 right here. I use it on the layer 2, so that's why I don't have any IP address here. And I already had the 88 VLAN because that's the one I use for my testing. Usually for my for any Wi-Fi networks I test, so I already have it here. I don't have to create it again, and we're good to go on this end. So we can go ahead and start the configuration of the new Wi-Fi network. First thing is to add the FreeRADIUS server to the list of Radius servers. So you can go to security authentication, and then you can navigate to the server tab, and then under Radius server you can click on Radius server, and we're going to add a new one. So FreeRADIUS. I'm going to call it FreeRADIUS SemFio add, and then you click on it. I'm going to click on this one. That's the one I want to change. All right. And then here I can change the settings. So host is the IP address of our FreeRADIUS server, so 192.168.100.11. The key is the secret that we previously defined, just like on the Cisco box we use the same one. So this is FreeRADIUS secret 123, FreeRADIUS secret 123. All right, and then it's going to use port 1812 for authentication and 1813 for accounting. So this is perfect. We don't have to do anything else. We can just apply. And here we have our Redis server. So we're good. Now we can create a new server group in which we are going to include the FreeRADIUS server. So FreeRADIUS, we call it server group FreeRADIUS file, and you can go ahead and click on the group and add the FreeRADIUS server. Alright, so we added the FreeRADIUS server and the server type is Radius. That's it. Apply. Alright, so we've just added our FreeRADIUS servers with their secret, so they can communicate. The controller will be able to forward authentication requests to the FreeRADIUS server, and we've just created a server group including this FreeRADIUS server that we can use later on in the authentication process. So the next thing to do is to create an AAA profile. So we can navigate to the AAA profile tab right here. And then the AAA profile is going to be used by our SSID to authenticate the users. So we can go ahead and create a new one. I'm going to call it AAA FreeRADIUS SemFio. Add. And I'm going to click on it to modify it. And I'm going to change the role that would be assigned to the user that is fully authenticated using 802.1X. So this is the 802.1X authentication default rule, and I'm going to use a role that I have previously defined. That's called SemFio connected, and basically SemFio connected is a role that gives you access to the internet. So once the user will be fully authenticated, the user is going to have this role, SemFio connected, and he's going to be able to go online. So I'm going to apply this here. All right, and now I'm going to configure the 802.1X authentication profile. So you navigate to layer 2 authentication. You click on 802.1X authentication, and you can create a new one. So I'm going to call it FreeRADIUS. Add. We're going to click on the AA profile we created earlier, and if we click on the 802.1X authentication, we're going to select the one we're going to select our group here, and this refers to our FreeRADIUS server. Alright, so basically what's going to happen is that we're going to use this AA profile for our Wi-Fi network, and then the controller is going to send the authentication request to this Radius server, and using the configuration that we just gave, and then if the Radius server replies with the accept, the controller is going to put the user into the SemFio connected role, and it's going to grant access to the network and access to internet. So now all we have to do is modify our AP configuration so the AP broadcasts this new Wi-Fi network compatible with WPA2 Enterprise and 802.1X authentication. So in order to do so, you can navigate to wireless AP configuration. I'm going to choose the AP group that I'm currently using, which is AP SemFio, AP group SemFio. And I'm going to navigate to wireless LAN virtual AP, And here you can see that I'm already using two different SSIDs on my Aruba AP. So I have Aruba SemFio and I have Aruba SemFio guest, and I'm going to add a new profile. I'm going to call Aruba, what's the name again? Aruba SemFio and add. All right. The AA profile, we're going to use the one we've just configured, so we can see that we have the SemFio connected. You can just apply. And then the SSID, we're going to create a new SSID, and we're going to call it Aruba SemFio Ant. And this SSID is going to be WPA2 AES. Perfect. Apply. It says that it already exists. All right, so I guess we can select it. Okay, apply. All right, I can just apply the configuration. All right, configuration updated successfully. And the only thing I'm missing here is the VLAN, right? So in order to change the VLAN, we can go and click on the Aruba SemFio Ant SSID. And here you can choose the VLAN 88. We can double check that we have the right information here. We have the AR profile, and then we have the SSID Aruba SemFio Ant. All right. So I have left a lot of default configurations because I wanted to focus on how to configure the radius side and how to configure the 802.1X AAA profile. But if you want to, later on go back to your configuration and change some settings, radio settings and stuff like this, you can surely do so. All right, so I have applied my configuration, so everything should be up and running. So if I check in my Wi-Fi status bar, I should see Aruba SemFio Ant. So we're good to go. Now we have Aruba SemFio Ant, we have Cisco SemFio Ant. So we are ready to test our, we're ready to test the FreeRADIUS server and make sure everything works and we can connect to the networks. We're ready to test. We're going to test on two different clients, a macOS 10 11.1 and a Windows 8. So for each client, we're going to import the CA certificate. So the client can recognize the FreeRADIUS server. We're going to connect to the new SSID, and we're going to use the users that we have previously defined in our FreeRADIUS user database. So if you recall, we defined two different users, one called Cisco user and the other one called Aruba user. All right, so if we go back to the little drawing, authentication process. So on the FreeRADIUS server, we have created previously two different certificates, the CA certificate and the server certificate. I have sent the CA certificate to my client, so I have it on my desktop right here, and I'm going to import it to the certificates on my Mac. And so once I do this, my client, my Mac, is going to recognize the FreeRADIUS server, the certificate coming from the FreeRADIUS server. So when I connect to the Aruba SemFio Enterprise network, I'm not going to have any pop-up asking me, do you recognize this certificate? It's going to be transparent for the end user. So that's exactly what we want. Okay, so now how do we add the CA certificate to the Mac? So I have it here on my desktop, so I'm going to close this one. You just have to double click on it. All right, so I've double clicked on it and it adds it to your keychain certificate. So here I have it, SemFio CA, right? And it tells me this root certificate is not trusted, so I can double click on it, trust, and then click on ORES trust. All right, because I know it's mine, I have created it. You can double check the information, the country, the states, the organization, the common name, everything that we have defined previously is here. So we know it's our certificate, so we can trust it, no problem. So once I close this window, they're gonna ask me to put my root password for my Mac, just as a security measure. And here we have our CA certificate, SemFio CA, that we can now use on this computer. So we can now go ahead and try to connect to the first network. So we're going to try to connect to the Aruba Wi-Fi network, and we're going to use the user Aruba user. So I'm going to open network preferences. I'm going to do it this way, and under the Wi-Fi interface, network interface, I'm going to select Aruba SemFio Ent. Alright, and here it tells me, okay, how do you want to connect? You can select automatic. You can, as a user, we're going to use Aruba user, right? And then as a password, if I recall correctly, the password is Aruba password 123. All right, Aruba password 123. And then once I click to join, it's going to send the authentication request to the controller, and the controller is going to forward it to the FreeRADIUS server. And if everything goes right, we should connect to the network, because the user is defined on the FreeRADIUS server. All right. As you saw, it took a little while to connect. We had the authentication setup, like process in the first step, and then after that it was checking for IP address. So now it looks like we connected, and as you can see here, we have ePeep and MSChat v2, and we've been connected for 28 seconds. All right. So now if we go back, and if I want to check my IP address, I have this, I can see it here, 192.168.88.14, but I also have this neat little tool that's called Wi-Fi signal, and it's great. You can just have a whole bunch of information about the Wi-Fi network on which you connected to, and here it also has the IP address 192.168.88.14. So I know I'm in the VLAN 88 and I'm connected. And if I want to double check on the Radius server, in the logs, we should see the user, Aruba user, and then MSF v2 for Aruba user, and then accept. All right, and then we see it's coming from the IP address 192.168.20.3, which is the Aruba controller. So everything worked, perfectly, and we connected to the Wi-Fi network. And then if we want to check if we can go online, we can just check if we can go on Google, and here we go, we connected on Google. Everything works fine. And if I want to double check on the controller, I can navigate to the monitoring tab, and there's the monitoring tab or the dashboard. I click on client, and I should see Aruba user. Here we are. All right, so the Aruba test worked perfectly on the Mac OS. Now we can try to do the same thing on the Cisco network. So I'm going to select Cisco SemFio Enterprise. The username I'm going to use this time is the Cisco user, and the password is Cisco password 123. Join. All right, so seeking for the IP address. All right, so everything worked perfectly as well. We didn't get any pop-up for any certificates because we previously installed the CA certificate on this client, on the supplicant. So everything worked perfectly. So it's showing us that we connected to the ePeep MSF v2, and then we have this IP address on VLAN 88. So we can try to see if we can go online again. All right, it works. And then I can double check on the controller for the Cisco, if we see the Cisco user. Under the client, Cisco user, here we are. All right. And then if we go back to the FreeRADIUS server, we should see this is the accounting, but if we go back up a little bit, we should see an accept. Accept, here it is. From the 192.168.20.2, which is the Cisco controller, and for the Cisco user. So here it is. So we have tested it on Mac OS. The next step is to test it on Windows 8. So I am now on Windows 8, and I have copied the certificate file on my desktop. So as you can see, the PEM extension is not recognized by Windows, so all I have to do is change the extension of the certificate file, changing from PEM to CRT. It's asking me if I really want to do the change. I say yes, and here we have the real recognized certificate file. I'm going to now import it into the certificate, the Trusted CA certificates on Windows. So you can open the control panel, and in the search bar just search for certificate, and then click on Manage Computer Certificates, and then under the Trusted Root Certification Authorities certificates, you can click right All Task Import, and we're going to import our CA certificate. Finish. Alright, so now we have our certificate right here. We can double click on it, make sure everything is good, and we are good to go. We can now connect to our networks. So let's start by connecting to the Aruba SemFio end. Connect. It's asking us for username and password, so I'm going to use Aruba user, Aruba password 123. So first time we connect, it's going to ask us about the certificate. Are you sure you want to connect to this server? It's because we didn't link the profile to the CA certificate yet. So for the first time, we're going to say yes, connect, and we're now connected. So if we go back to control panel, and if we go back to the network connection, we can now see that we're connected to the Wi-Fi network Aruba SemFio in. So if we click on it, click on wireless properties, security, next to Microsoft, protected IP PEEP, click on settings, and here we have the little checkbox that says verify the server's identity by validating this certificate. And here in the the list of trusted root certificate, you can choose SemFio CA, the one we just uploaded. So after we do this, and it does need a reboot for some reason on Windows, but next time we connect to the Aruba SemFio and network, it shouldn't ask us to validate the certificate anymore. You should just connect, and it's going to do the validation process behind the user, and it's going to be transferred for the end user. Alright, so this worked. Let's try the Cisco SemFio end. It's the same process. Connect. Username. This time we're going to use this Cisco user. Cisco password 123. Same thing here. It's asking us to validate it's presenting the certificate, server certificate, and asking us if we really want to connect to this server. And so here once again we have the Cisco SemFio end certificate. So we can go ahead and change the same properties. So next time it just validates the server certificates according to the SemFio CA authority. So everything goes right. Alright, it's same thing here. It does require a reboot, so I'm going to stop the video, reboot the computer, and then start the video again and show you the seamless connection. Alright, so I'm back on the Windows after reboot, so we're going to try to connect to the networks, the 802.1X Wi-Fi network. So let's try with the Cisco SemFio and so well, I just did the connection seamlessly. Let's try the Aruba SemFio and it just connects without, asking us to validate the certificate anymore. And if we check the IP address, we have an IP address in the 88 VLAN. So everything looks good. Everything looks good. Alright, so that was a testing on Windows 8. So we've just done the testing on the Mac and Windows, and it worked great. So now to conclude this this video, you can check out some useful debug commands you can use on the Aruba controller and on the Cisco controller. I'm gonna include this little document to the blog post so you guys can check it out on your own time. So thank you for watching. You can go review the tutorial on the blog, semfionetworks.com/blog, and so just don't hesitate to give me your feedbacks, and maybe I can make it a little bit better next time. Thank you very much for watching. Bye bye.